Hey, it's time for Bay Legends. It's your Bay baby, Sterling James, and we are joined today. Now, first and foremost, I gotta say, just a really nice guy.
Oh, Sterling,
Just
thank
a
you.
really nice guy.
Thank you, Sterling.
But he is an award-winning TV news anchor, reporter, broadcaster, journalist, philanthropist, musician, singer, ice skate instructor, and again, a very nice guy. Please welcome Bay legend, Mr. Dan Ashley.
Sterling, thank you so much. What an honor to be on the program. When you say all that, maybe I just have a short attention span. Maybe that's really my problem.
I think that you are committed to your work, but you also, and this is just my guesstimate here, I think much like me and with broadcasting, it's so nice to use our platform for all of that other soul food that's available in the world that you can kind of dip from and taste and also serve. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. You know, that's a great way to look at it. And I think you're exactly right, Sterling. You know, we have such a unique privilege in the Bay Area as part of the media community. And I've been here more than 25 years now. I've been doing television news for 35 years. And it's my life's passion.
Yeah.
It's my life's work. It's what I've always wanted to do. And it's such a unique opportunity to have that place in town, and it's a unique platform to do other things and explore other areas. And music is just another one of those aspects. To me, music is communication, just like what I do for a living. So it's all great fun.
I had a chance to watch the Music in Schools Today gala, virtual gala recently, of which you are chairman of the board. And you had a nice cameo in the gala. Tell us about that organization, why it's near and dear to your heart as a musician and as a broadcaster.
Well, you know, Sterling, a funny story. When I was a kid, maybe early teens, 13, 14, you know, I always loved music of most varieties, but like most kids that age, I particularly liked popular music and rock and roll. And my mother was very much into classical music. My sister played the violin and the piano, and she even played with the symphony briefly. And so she used to take us to all of these things. And I remember going to see a performance by Eugene Fodor, who at the time was an up-and-coming violinist who was going to have a huge career. He kind of had personal problems later that I think hurt his career, but he was phenomenally talented. And I remember my mother dragging me to go see this thing. And I didn't want to go. And she said, well, you're going to go. And I went with all my siblings. And I said, well, I'll go. You can make me go, but you can't make me listen. Very defiant as a 13, 14 teenager.
Yes.
I had the time of my life. This guy was so good and so engaging and spoke with the audience and played beautifully, opened my eyes to classical music in a new way. And so that exposure combined with what we got almost by requirement when we were kids, is exposure to the symphony in town. So, you know, we'd go to the symphony folks would come to the school. Yeah. So I recognized fairly early on the importance of having music in a household, or music as part of your education. And because my sister played instruments, I tried every instrument you can name and was terrible at all of them because I never practiced or tried. But so makes a lot of sense to me. Music in schools today, and so many schools are so understandably impacted, and music and physical education programs as well can take a back seat, to some degree understandably, but I think most will agree that music education adds so much richness to a young person's life. It's not about them going on to be musicians or playing anything, just to appreciate it and just to add a little cultural richness and awareness. So music in schools today is important to me for that reason. The same reason I'm on the board of the Oakland Symphony. You know, they do such amazing work with such a diverse audience and diverse music program. It's really a unique organization. So those and some other causes are very important to me for those reasons.
Well, and I have to bring up the Bamis because I know Kenny Wardell just handed down the hat, if you will, for and that's president, chairman.
President of the Bamis Foundation. I just came on to take those reins. And that's to bring the Bamis back for the next generation.
Please do.
I know, they need to be. The Bamis, first of all, the Bay Area music scene is so important.
Yeah.
And so profoundly impactful and has been for decades. And the Bamis were part of that legacy in BAM magazine. So, when Kenny, who's a good friend, asked me to come on and help in that regard, I was honored to do it. What a flattering thing to take the reins of something that has been such a really crown jewel and less prominent one the last few years. We want to change that because
Love
it's
the
important.
Bamis. I used to, covet the magazine. My husband, who's a Bay Area musician, Adrian Isabel, he's a percussionist. He actually made the cover one year.
Wow.
I used to host some of the interviews backstage at the Bamis Productions, their award shows. Got a chance to interview Carlos Santana and Green Day. And you're right, there's so much amazing, important music that has come out of the Bay Area, and that when we get a chance to unveil it is still really happening right here in the Bay.
It's true, and the Bamis Foundation is also focused on young people and creating opportunities in music for them. And it's such a part of our cultural legacy. It's so great. And we also want to, part of the foundation is to expand the Walk of Fame at Bill Graham Civic Auditorium.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, Sammy Hagar, who's a friend of mine, was inducted, and he asked me to induct him. And we want to do more of that. It's a lot of effort. It's more complicated than you would think.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to do.
And just while we're talking about your philanthropic pursuits, Rock the Casa.
Rock the Casa, you're very kind, Sterling, to remember. Rock the Casa is my 501c3 charity that I started 7 or 8 years ago to support underserved kids in need. And that organization, through a big fundraiser, which I'll describe briefly in a moment, supports several organizations that are very near and dear to my heart that help underserved kids. Court-appointed special advocates, that's the Casa, and Rock the Casa, helps kids who've been removed from their homes because of abuse and neglect. I'm on the board. Friends at Camp Concord, we send underserved kids to summer camp. I'm on the board for a long time as well. And in the 24 years, I think now, that I've hosted a golf tournament, we just did a virtual thing because we couldn't do a golf tournament this year. We've sent 10,000 underserved kids to summer camp, all expenses paid, at Tahoe. And then Big Brothers and Big Sisters is a beneficiary, provides great mentorship all around the Bay Area. And another smaller beneficiary is a Boys and Girls Club of Contra Costa. So Rock the Casa I created to support these organizations, principally Casa and Friends at Camp Concord, and then I added the others a little later on, all around children. And it's a big musical event. It's a concert right before COVID.
Yeah.
Literally 1 week before everything shut down, we squeaked in under the wire, and I put on a big concert at the Lesher Center in Walnut Creek. This year was Rick Springfield. And he was fabulous. He was just great.
The first concert I ever saw
was Rick Springfield?
Was Rick Springfield,
Oh, Jesse's
1982,
Girl. Wow.
Monterey County Fairgrounds. Yes.
Were you a fan because of his music or because of the soap opera first?
His music.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the soap opera.
Yeah, of course, the Doctor. And so we've had Patti LaBelle, Melissa Etheridge, Ario Speedwagon, Cheap Trick, Eddie Money, who is a dear friend, departed not long ago, as we know. So we've put on these great concerts, and it's been a lot of fun to raise money in that way.
Yeah. See, that's your soul food.
Yeah, it's fun. I've done literally hundreds, maybe thousands of fundraisers and other kinds of support for charities, banquets, golf tournaments. I thought, what can I do to give people a different evening out? Let's use music to do that and give them a concert that's for charity, rather than the traditional show up and have, nothing wrong with it, but have a chicken or salmon dinner at a table and have an auction in a banquet room. Those are great, but there are a lot of those, so I wanted to do something different.
Plus, you get to play.
We play. My band performs every year, which is great fun.
Tell us about the band, and then I want to hear about the band in a second, but since we just mentioned it, who's the first concert you ever attended?
Oh, gosh, that's a great question.
Back in Chapel Hill.
Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where I grew up. I should know that off the top of my head. It was probably, I think it was a Rolling Stones concert.
Oh, gosh.
I think.
That's one band that has still eluded me that I have not seen
Really?
live.
I've seen them an embarrassing amount of times.
That's
actually.
okay.
I really enjoy them. But they're just fun events.
Okay.
I think it was a Stones concert.
The Stones.
I think so. Yeah.
At what age-ish? Were you too young to be there?
No, I wasn't. I was a nerdy
You're a good
kid.
guy.
Yeah, I was a good. So no, it was later, much later.
So tell us about the band. Tell us about the influence in Chapel Hill. Tell us about being here in the Bay. What bands are influencing your work and your music? And then I actually want to hear, who's in the band? What does that look like?
Oh yeah, I've got it. Well, the band just goes by my name, and it is. I kind of describe it as an Americana rock band.
Okay.
And so we do a lot of original stuff and more all the time. I'm trying to write as much music
As you're a
I can.
songwriter as well.
And that's great fun. And learning to do that as a craft and get better at it is fun. I still have a long way to go, but we've put out a few songs that we're proud of, and including a Christmas song that'll be on Coit this Christmas.
Okay, fun.
But so Americana, but the influences would be kind of a hodgepodge. I love John Mellencamp.
Okay.
I love REM. Bands like there's a little bit of influence, a little bit by Pearl Jam, by Neil Young a little bit. These are the bands that I kind of tend to, and I've really gotten into lately the Killers too, which
I love the Killers.
They're great. I've always liked them, but I've started really paying attention to their songwriting.
Sounds like you like a storytelling.
I like storytelling, and
Yeah.
it's interesting you say that. And another, more in that country, or we're Americana, but Keith Urban. Love Keith Urban and Darius Rucker.
Darius Rucker.
Love those
From
guys.
Hooties.
Yeah, and he lives in Charleston, South Carolina, where I used to work before moving to the Bay
wow.
Area. I view songwriting and music as I do my work. I'm a storyteller, and that's what I try to do in music. And so I try to write things where I'm taking you somewhere and telling you a story.
And are you telling your stories? Are you telling the people's stories? Are you telling the stories of the world? Are you integrating your background as a journalist and a broadcaster who have covered stories around the world?
I am sometimes, and sometimes they're autobiographical in the sense that they relate to my experiences. Like when I released one I released last year called "What Really Matters,"
Yeah.
which is a reflection of the commentary that I do every week on ABC7.
Your segment, yeah.
It reflects a lifetime spent seeing things as a reporter. But sometimes there's a song I have out now that's kind of a love song that was written about my sweetheart, but sometimes they're just channeling observations.
Yeah.
They can't all be biographical. That would be boring, and you don't always have the experience. But if you observe, then you can write about it, which is what I do in my job.
Very true. What's your relationship with the musicians as far as the musicianship? Because you mentioned that you've tried lots of different instruments. You said that off camera, you said you fiddled around with the guitar a little bit. So when you're writing as a lyricist, are you also learning how to structure the arrangements of a song with your players?
I am, and I have a great music producer I work with who is incredibly talented. I play enough guitar to be dangerous. I couldn't call myself a guitar player, but I learned. Play enough harmonica to be dangerous. I'm trying to learn to be better at all of those things. But, a lot of it, I'll go to my producer and I'll have lyrics and a story idea and a title for the song and a melody in my head and kind of an idea of how I hear it. And I'll hum what I hear as the melody or what I hear as riffs.
Yeah.
And we kind of go from there. But the musicians in my band are all touring pros. I mean, they're phenomenal musicians. It's a great privilege to play with them. Vernon Ice Black, who for years was Mariah Carey's music director and lead guitarist. Simon Russell.
Simon, one of our
fabulous
producers
keyboardist
here.
and vocalist, one of the producers of this program.
And hosts,
Yeah, who's one of my dear friends. The whole group are just Billy Johnson. Billy Shoes Johnson is the drummer in my band. He toured with Santana. We have really first-rate musicians. So they're making me better.
Good. How have you been able to make and share music during COVID?
Yeah, that's a bit of a challenge, isn't it? But like everything else in our lives, during this time we adapt.
Yeah.
And so I will send things back and forth to my producer. I will give him ideas. He'll send me tracks back. I've gone in a couple of times to record, and we do it. He's in one room, I'm in the other, and much like we're doing here, except even farther apart. So we're careful about it. But I have not seen or rehearsed with the band since COVID, which is a bit of a bummer. But everything has its place and its time.
We'll get to it.
Yeah, we'll get back to it.
When it all clears and it's safe to do so, what's like the first gig you'd love to do? Do you have a special venue that you frequent, or
Gosh, Sterling, that's a good question.
good old
I don't know.
Sweetwater or something in Walnut
Yeah,
Creek where you
Sweetwater's fun.
reside? Or
What we were supposed to do. We were supposed to do some a couple of festivals this summer before the lockdown, and
Yeah.
I'd love to get those rescheduled because those are kind of fun. And actually, there was talk we were working on playing San Quentin Prison, which I think would be kind of a neat experience. I've been there as a reporter. It'd be fun to go there as a musician and entertain there. I don't know. So we'll see. Whatever comes up.
Okay.
I'm not picky. I love to trot them out and play.
trot them out and play. I know that myself, as a broadcaster, currently unemployed, the state of the world today has been very heavy with pandemic, fire, hurricanes, school shootings, race riots, police violence. Carrying all of that as a broadcaster, as a journalist, and trying to stay impartial, and then also trying to stay human. How are you balancing that, pardon me, on camera of stating the facts, here's what's going on, but then also being true to yourself and how you feel about everything that's going on in the world?
Thanks. That's a great question. I get asked that periodically. How do you stay engaged and yet detached at the same time? And the answer is it's easier than you think. My job is not to overlay my emotions or my personal feelings on stories I cover, and I do pride myself on just the facts, ma'am, trying to be just as factual and impartial as I can, regardless of how I might feel about it. That seldom enters into my thinking, to be honest. Now, sure, sometimes it does. And I'm not the most political person in the world, so I don't view things, from red state, blue state. I just view, I try to just view the facts and the people involved in the stories. That said, there are certain stories that people expect and don't mind knowing that, because I'm a journalist, but I'm a human being first and a citizen of this community and an American.
Yeah.
So they don't mind understanding that, hey, this affects me as well. And those emotional stories, something bad happens to a child or some outrage that may happen. You don't want to go overboard, but it's okay to let people know, hey, this affects me as well.
Sure.
But that's different than creating an imbalance in my reporting about it. So it can be a fine line sometimes, but I've done this for a long time. I've seen almost every story, and I can tell you, having what people don't, you do carry some of it with you, and I've certainly seen things over the years that I'll never get out of my head when I think about really unpleasant things sometimes reporters have to see and do. I don't do that as much anymore, thank goodness, but it was very formative at the time, and we can talk about any of those stories you want. But it brought me to where I am now in terms of whatever level of understanding I may have or bring to the coverage that we do.
True. I remember when Prince died, I was on the air, and it was my duty to, first of all, make sure it was true, because there was all that was happening when Michael Jackson passed away, right? It was like, is he not? How did it happen? So when Prince passed, I had to make sure that it was factual. And then I had to keep going. I wanted to just cry and crawl up underneath the board and just.
But you can't. Right?
But you can't. You got to keep it going. And then most recently, there's just so much access. Do you have alerts on your phone for like CNN and TMZ and all,
ABC and all of them? Sure.
Yeah.
And I never really, sometimes it's nice to be away from that, but I really don't allow myself to be away from that too often.
Yeah.
Because I am innately curious and want to know what's going on, and then it's my job to know what's going on. But it can be overwhelming, I think, for a lot of people a lot of times. I hear that from a lot of viewers, that there's overload, information, but also emotion overload. And there's so much tension in the country right now with concern over COVID, of course, racial and social justice, what's happened over the last few months with the political campaigns and the election. There's so much angst and tension. But I'm an optimist, and I try to remember, look, we'll get through it. We've gotten through far worse, and we'll get through this.
And you've seen so much of it and reported through so much of it. Yeah. Bless you for being an optimist. And I know you had an opportunity to interview then President Barack Obama at the White House in 2013. If you had the opportunity to do an exit interview with Donald Trump, would you take it? And I guess this is a choice, I know you sometimes have to go on assignment, but if this was a choice, would you take it?
Oh, absolutely, without question. I covered his inauguration, actually, from Washington.
Yeah.
So, absolutely. I mean, there's no one that I wouldn't want to interview who's been in the news. Oh, yeah, or that I would refuse to interview. No, it doesn't matter. Sure. I mean, I would have questions that I think a lot of people would want answered, and the questions that I'd want answered. So, absolutely. Again, that goes to not, would I ask him some hard questions? Yeah, you bet.
You better.
But that goes to, my job is just to report facts, gather information, and let someone reveal themselves to the audience in an authentic way. And so, yeah, without question, I'd jump at the chance.
Absolutely. Okay, let's see.
Interviewing President Barack Obama was a great privilege. I'd been to the White House. I grew up in Chapel Hill and used to spend a fair amount of time in Washington. I've been to the White House as a tourist, actually.
Well,
but all those years, I've been to, the Iowa caucuses, New Hampshire primary, South Carolina primary, all over the country covering campaigns and conventions. But I'd never been to the White House as a reporter until interviewing Obama.
Until then, yeah.
And it was a great experience.
How has, just quickly again on Trump, how has his fake news affected how you work or how you feel about the work that you do?
I think instinctively you might think it makes us defensive, and maybe it does a little bit, but we don't take it seriously in that we don't take it as a true reflection of what we're doing. We take the effect it has on the public seriously. And I think what the president has done that is a great disservice is to try to delegitimize the role of the news media. And we make mistakes. But as I always tell people, none of us got ordained. We just got hired. So we're going to make mistakes. But whenever you hear something you don't like, to discredit it, does a great disservice because it erodes faith in an important institution. I mean, the First Amendment is no joke.
Sure.
The ability to seek out information, for reporters to do that and to disseminate it to viewers in a free and open way, even if you don't like, if you don't like what I'm saying, turn it off.
Sure.
And to delegitimize that, I think, is a dangerous thing. And it's what's happened with the election process as he's fought that. Hey, I'm all for if you think there needs to be a recount or you want it to be fine. But when clearly there's no evidence at all of any widespread fraud, to continually claim that there is in an effort to provide an excuse for why the election was lost or to delegitimize that process, it just undermines our democracy.
And this is an opinion, of course, of his, how much he cares about democracy, of how much he really just needs to stay in the spotlight and have some relevancy. And whether it's, good news or bad news or fake news,
right?
Any PR is good PR for the man. So 25 years here in the Bay Area, more than that in the business and as an anchor and as a broadcaster. And it's changed so much over the years, just the technology and the content and what's expected. And I'm talking a lot about, especially about social media. I know that many people in broadcast, radio, and television are losing their jobs right now. A lot because the companies that are running these stations are absolutely hemorrhaging money due to COVID. But a lot of people also not able to kind of keep up with what the new expectations are through social media, the branding and the Facebook Live, and how are you kind of staying on top of that? Do you have, because it feels to me like it's gotten to be almost two jobs, where you're like, I'm the television broadcaster, and then I also have to do my social media work.
It's an interesting change. You know, when I first started in television 35 years ago, CNN was barely around. ABC, NBC, CBS were really the only game in town. There wasn't an MSNBC. There wasn't a Fox News. There wasn't an internet. There wasn't social media.
Right.
We got newspapers delivered on our driveways. You know, it was a different time. And our industry has been impacted and has had to adapt with each change in distribution and each change in diversification of how information is gathered and spread, and then the fracturing kind of the audience. You know, remember VCRs?
Right.
I mean, young people don't even know what those are now.
Sure.
And CD players, and all of those things began to compete. Well, now with on-demand and DVRs and the internet and YouTube and on and on and on and on and on, it's challenging. And then we factor in the internet and social media. It's challenging, but there's a great opportunity for us because no one is really doing what we're doing other than local media, for example. Going out, gathering local information that you can rely on from people who live here and have been here for a long time and who are trained professionals. But social media has changed the landscape so dramatically. You know, it used to be that when Walter Cronkite came on, and he was one of those that inspired me to pursue this as a career, Uncle Walter told us what was happening, and we assumed that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a two-way street. It's a two-way conversation that I'm constantly having with viewers and that they're having with us. And the mistake isn't even out of my mouth, and someone's Googled it and sent me, tweeted, look, well, this idiot just said this.
Yeah.
So there's an exciting challenge in that because it keeps you on your toes. But it's also a slaughterhouse on social media, and it's mean-spirited, which I don't like.
Sure.
And people just literally disseminate things that are completely untrue. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't realize it's completely untrue.
Sure.
And so it's challenging, but it is, I think, a great opportunity. And in a way, that gives us the chance to cut through the noise in a different way.
It just moves so fast.
Oh, it does. I mean, it used to be, a news cycle was 24 hours or even longer many years ago. Now it's 2 minutes. I mean, we're on to the next thing with the next tweet.
Yeah. What's your platform that you do? You like to tweet? Are you into the TikTok? Like, are you twitching? I'm trying to keep up with all of them.
I'm twitching just thinking about all that stuff. I do Facebook for work, and I'm on Twitter for work, and a little bit of Instagram, not TikTok. I don't, interestingly enough, true story, and I do some of that too on the music side for fun to stay in touch with people who are into the music. But for work, it's Facebook and Twitter mostly, and I don't have a personal Twitter account. I have a personal Facebook page because you have to have the fan page or the professional page.
Right.
I don't have a single friend on my personal Facebook page. I don't have a single thing I put up. I just don't use it.
It's just a
thing because I had to have it to do the professional page.
Yeah.
It's not something I would be into other than my need to do it professionally. And I totally get it and appreciate the need to do it professionally because it's foolish not to be where our viewers are or where part of the audience is. And I don't mind it. It's fun. I just, interestingly enough, have no desire to do it for personal use. You know what, Sterling? I'm not going to post what I did. I'll call you and tell you. I don't need,
Are you still pick up the phone kind of and call kind of guy?
All day long. I mean, call or text. Sure, I'm much more in touch with people that way.
And you have 2 children, right?
2 grown children, sons, 29, 27.
Okay, and where are they on their platforms? And do they give you a hard time, old man?
A little. They do. In fact, my youngest son is 27, lives here in the East Bay. I had to get on a 2 or 3 or 4 times call him the other night because I needed to do this Zoom conference, and I couldn't figure it out. So he talked me through it. My oldest kid lives in L.A., 29, and they're of course hip, and they know how to do all that stuff without thinking about it.
Do you think that our listeners, our viewers, our society have the patience to wait for us to catch up on these type of platforms and this type of technology? Or do you think they're going to go, they don't get it, and move on to somebody else who does?
I think maybe a little bit of both. I think we are working very hard to catch up and keep up, and I think by and large we're doing a pretty good job on that. You know, there's in my job or even yours, there are certain expectations, and you know, nobody wants me posting goofy TikTok videos. That's not what I'm supposed to be using on the. I mean, I'm sure people would want, but that's not the expectation that I'm doing that. So I don't feel the need to keep up with what's out there in that respect. I need to keep up there with it in terms of being in touch with people who care about the news and current events and want to interact with me and us at the station. That's where I need to be, and I think that's the expectation.
What platforms are you using to help promote your music or share your music?
Facebook, Twitter, YouTube.
You still have a web page?
And yeah, I have a web page and all that. So, you know, those usual things, but I'm not nearly as active as I probably ought to be because, frankly, I spend most of my time being active on the professional side of it for work because it is almost a full-time job keeping up with all of that.
Yeah. What are some of the lyrics that are kind of bouncing around in your head right now, or some of the melodies or something that when you came in today, you showed Simon a little something, and
oh yeah, that was a song I actually wrote about the pandemic called "We Stayed Home."
We stayed home.
We stayed home.
Tell us about it.
And well, I wanted to do something because we'd done just nonstop coverage of this health crisis and economic crisis that everyone was so concerned about. And I wanted to, as I try to do often, is reflect that in a song because that's authentic to me. To be there, why is he singing about that? Well, because it's something that he's experiencing and he can talk about. And so "We Stayed Home." Again, the optimist. The lyrics of that song started as a trickle far away land. All of a sudden, crisis was at hand, and then you get to the chorus and the hook of the song, which is "Ain't no 6 feet ever going to keep us apart."
Wow.
You know.
You are an eternal optimist.
Yeah, you know, we stayed home. Spirit. Here's the chorus: "We stayed home. Spirit strong as bone. Ain't no 6 feet ever going to keep us apart." And I believe that. And I think as this crisis has dragged on, I sense more anxiety, especially around the holidays, and a fatigue. Yeah. We're all a little tired. It's now 8 coming on 9 months.
Pandemic fatigue.
And now it's surging again, and it's been withering. And but we'll get through it. And there have been so many other withering experiences that we've had as a country over the years. I mean, you know, imagine what the Great Depression was like for 8-9 years.
And what came after the Great Depression?
And what came after that? Great success.
The Roaring *20s.
Yeah, of course. Yes. Or the turmoil in the late '60s and the recessions that happened in the '70s and the '80s, and then the one we just had 2008. You know, we've been through some things before. Yeah. This is bad and different. Think of the tension of World War II and or the Civil War and on and on and on. It's not our first rodeo. It just isn't. And that's not to minimize it. It's a terrible thing that's happening. And sadly, too many people have not made it through, but we will make it through.
It's hard to look back at that so much because those of us that are here in the here and now and who are experiencing it now, I mean, obviously there are people who have lived through and seen so much of it, and you've covered so much of it. But me being a first-time mom, I'm 50 years old and I have an 8-year-old child, and I thought I had kind of seen and done quite a bit, but now seeing it all new through an 8-year-old child and raising her through this.
Different perspective, isn't it?
Ooh, yeah. Very much so. And wondering if I'm ever going to be able to take her to a concert like we grew up going to, outdoor festivals or big arena shows. And is she going to be able to have those type of experiences?
She will. We'll get back to that. With any luck, sooner rather than later, as these vaccines are disseminated, and this will pass. It's taken a terrible toll, but it will pass, and we'll get back to. Remember, after 9/11, we all said nothing will be the same. It's never going to. And nothing is exactly the same.
Sure.
But we did get back to traveling. We did get back to being less fearful, and we'll do the same here. we'll get through it.
I think as broadcasters and journalists, we are often not seen as essential workers, but we are essential workers. We're going to work every day. I wish musicians could be essential workers too.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we are essential workers, and the state even recognizes that. After all, one of the things that is fundamental to what we do every day is disseminate information that is critical to people's health and safety. So that's why right away we were designated essential workers, and it is essential work. People are now at home very much in need of information. And not just information, in the case of television news, information and the familiarity of a television station or a group of people that they trust and that they've seen and that represent some sense of normalcy, and that, hey, it's it's okay, it's not all bad. The people that I know have trusted for some time are in my home giving me information, are there now in this crisis. So I think that's important too, and I think music is essential. I mean, that's why it's the universal language, and that's why since the human beings first stood upright, or even before they started playing music of some kind, it provides us great comfort and entertainment and all of that. At the moment, live music just isn't essential. Sure. In fact, it's dangerous. But music itself hasn't changed, and the need for it hasn't changed.
What do you think it's going to look like? Do you think it's going to be drive-in music,
No,
theater?
I think now, and before things rolled back again, they're starting to do a little bit more of that. The drive-in, stay in your car, listen to concert. That's an adaptation to the circumstances now.
Or the porch concert.
The porch concert. Hey, these are great.
I love
this
it.
is what people do. We adapt.
You can't squash it.
Yeah, that's why human beings have lasted all this time, over the eons, because we adapt, and we're adapting here. But once this passes, we will fill arenas again to watch football games and rock concerts.
Yeah. So 25 more years in broadcast news here in the Bay Area, Mr. Dan Ashley?
Oh, my gosh.
What do you think?
How old will I be? No, but I'd like to go for a good while longer.
Yeah.
As long as people are kind enough to invite me into their homes and let me do it, and my wonderful television station is so supportive. I couldn't be more fortunate to work for a place, not only that has been supportive of us, but has been really supportive. I wish people saw what happens behind the scenes in terms of the commitment to trying to be excellent, and the commitment to allowing us to excel. Very fortunate, ABC7 owned by Disney. Not everybody has that situation where we really work for an absolutely first-rate, sterling company.
Oh, look at that. And then maybe retire into the sunset with your good old friend Sammy Hagar and...
Yeah, I don't think Sammy couldn't put up with me that long. It's interesting. When you do something you love, it's hard to think about retiring. That time will come, and I suppose I'll look forward to doing other things. But
I'm not pushing you into a retirement at all.
What are
I'm
you
thinking
saying,
about
sir?
retiring into music, which is why I brought up Sammy again.
I'd love to keep doing music as long as I can. People come up all the time and they'll say, "Hey, I watch you. I just had to come see you sing and see the music." It's just it's a way to connect with people in a different way.
Yeah.
And I think most people appreciate that chance to interact in that way, and I certainly do. I love it. I sang in public long before I should have sung in public, but and some would argue I still shouldn't. But if it's coming from an authentic place, I think it's great.
And an optimistic place, a truthful place, an honest place.
Yeah, exactly.
And you say you play enough guitar to be dangerous, and enough harmonica to be dangerous. Is there anything you want to really, really get better at or master?
Well, first and foremost, as a vocalist, as a singer, I just want to get as good as I can possibly be at that. I really harmonica and guitar are fun, and they go hand in hand with being the front man or the lead singer as something you can do on stage while you sing. So I just want to keep tinkering around with that and getting better at that.
Just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Dan Ashley, ladies and gentlemen, on Bay Legends. We know you weren't born here, but you are definitely a Bay baby.
Thank you, Sterling. It's funny. It is. I was born in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and grew up there, born and raised. And for 7 years, my dad took a job in Buffalo, New York.
Okay.
So my siblings were all born up there. And then when I was 8 or almost 8, we moved back to Chapel Hill. So I always tease my siblings that, technically you guys are Yankees. And then I worked there in the Raleigh-Durham area for a year and a half. And then I moved to Charleston, South Carolina. I was there for 8.5 years and then moved here more than 25 years ago. And it's funny because this was the place I was very fortunate. I had opportunities when I was leaving Charleston to go a lot of places: New York, Chicago, Dallas, Houston, several different, Pittsburgh, and Indianapolis was one that I heard was a nice place to live. But San Francisco was where I most wanted to come, and I'll tell you why. It was an odd circumstance. But to button that first point, the Bay Area is my home.
Yeah.
I mean, and I feel like a Bay Area native. I may not have been born here, but it's where my heart is now, if that makes sense.
For sure.
I brought my heart to San Francisco, and I'm leaving it here. In 19, do you have time for a quick story?
Quick story, absolutely.
In 1989, September 22nd, I believe, 21st or 22nd, Hurricane Hugo slammed into Charleston, South Carolina. It was a Category 4, and really at the last minute, it bumped up to a Category 5 hurricane offshore. Ferocious, enormous storm. And I spent that period covering it as the storm raged in the most dangerous spot you could be in. We didn't know that at the time, but that northeast corner. And I was underneath a 2,000-foot transmitter. And they had told me, it's rated for 165 miles an hour, you'll be fine. So I went there with a crew and some engineers, and we brought, because we knew the station would get kicked off the air. It was terrifying. On the air, never showed that it was terrifying. When I wasn't on the air, I thought, literally, I'm not going to see my family. And at one point, imagine 160, 70 mile an hour winds coming through a 2,000-foot tower. It sounds like a freight train. And we were in the northeast corner. 5 hours. We never got the eye. When it finally started to die down, I thought, I can't take another 5 hours. Well, we just never got the eye. It was that northeast corner, so it was the whole thing hitting us the whole time. And I remember at one point that my producer was on the phone across the room, and all of a sudden, all the lights went out, and there was this groaning of equipment, and I heard her say, the tower's collapsing, the tower's collapsing. And we all just sat. Nobody said a word, dead silent. We thought the whole thing was going to come down on us. And one did collapse half a mile away, but they didn't have anybody there at another station. It was some power surge failure and the equipment groaning and moaning. It was just terrifying. San Francisco sent relief to Red Cross relief and other aid to Charleston to help.
Yeah.
3 weeks later, 3.5 weeks later, the earthquake hit San Francisco.
Oh my God.
So what a strange month I had. They sent me to cover the earthquake. I'd never been to San Francisco. And so I flew out here, worked out of KGO because we're an ABC station in Charleston as well. And even though it was a strange time, I was reporting the next day from the Marina District after the quake. And even though it was a strange time to be here, I thought, gosh, what an interesting place.
What a beautiful
Physically
place.
beautiful. People seemed, working out of KGO was so impressive. And I remember telling the person that represents me, what would you like to do? And I said, I'd love to work at a place like KGO in San Francisco. We never spoke about it again, Sterling, until 2.5 years later or 3. He called me up and said, remember you said you wanted to work at KGO? You're up for the 5 o'clock anchor job. So even though I had all these other opportunities and contracts offered to me, as soon as this one happened, that's the one I was going to take.
Hugo kind of blew you to us.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So that's a true story of how I ended up here. Just a strange happenstance, but it's something about it when I got here. It just felt like it's a place I should be.
Welcome
And
home.
it certainly has been.
Welcome home.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're lucky to have you.
Oh, listen, I'm lucky to be here. That's very kind of you to say, and I'm lucky to be with you, Sterling. You're so incredibly kind to have me on the show.
Thank you.
I
My
appreciate it.
pleasure. He's a Bay legend, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Dan Ashley.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm Sterling James. Thank you for tuning in and continue to support Bay legends here in the Bay Area because, of course, they serve us, so we will continue to serve them as well. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.